Hello and welcome to TidyX episode 162. TidyX is a screencast where we go through and explain how our code works. My name's Ellis Hughes.
And my name's Patrick Ward. Here we are, TidyX, episode 162. As always, be sure to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. And if you enjoy our work and you'd like to support it, we do have a Patreon page, and we're always very thankful of anything that you might like to donate. That said, 162, we're still talking about Shiny apps. We started this, I think, 2 episodes ago. And really, what we're doing now, as opposed to the previous Shiny app episodes that we've done, is talking about kind of the interconnectedness of Shiny apps, like how to connect up to Shiny apps, how to connect up Shiny apps to external websites, how to pre-populate Shiny apps from something coming into the Shiny app, those kinds of things are things we're going over. So today we're going to get into how to build your Shiny app and allow the user the ability to click a link and reach out to a web page. And Ellis has an example of the finished product, and then we'll go through the nuts and bolts after this.
Yep, yeah, so this Shiny app is for NHL hockey data since the season is going on right now. So I thought it might be fun to have a bit of an active sport for us to look at. So we've got this Shiny app that's got two simple inputs. It's got season and game. So you can see we've already selected the 2023 season. And if you go to choose game, which is grayed out, this is kind of an important fun trick here. You can see all these games that have already occurred for the 2023 season. I guess technically the 2024 season is going on right now, huh? Since this is games from 2022. But yeah, so you can see all these past games here, and then you can click on it. And now it's going to update our panel on the right hand side to show us some high level information about the game. So it's again, this is the date and the who played. I think this was the visitor versus the home team. Yeah, Minnesota Wild. So this was how many they scored, the duration of the game, the attendance, and then some high level stats. So scoring and then any penalties that occurred during the game. One cool piece is that if you were to click on this link here, it takes you directly to the hockeyreference.com website if you wanted to go and see more details about the game. So they have, for example, the player level stats, so scoring, goals, assists, goalies. Again, for the home team as well, their statistics. Basically, it's a way to, hey, here's some high level information you want to show maybe your coach or something like that, and then you can link out to the more detailed reference there. So let's go back to that. But you can also, you can jump around and look at different games and look at those. Isn't that fun? Apparently, Vegas was the only person or team that scored in October of 2022 in that game. But you can also go and look at, tons of past seasons as well. So let's look at, I don't know, let's look at 2013 and choose the Carolina Hurricanes versus the Florida Panthers. And you can kind of jump around and see that. So all of this time, this website or this Shiny app is actually pulling information from hockeyreference.com and doing some web scraping for us whenever we click that. And so we're able to do it really quickly, which is really nice. But then kind of update and pull this information as we go. And so I think we will be updating this app in the future to connect to more than just the hockeyreference.com website, but to another Shiny app that we're not going to get into yet. I think it'll be kind of fun to keep that a surprise. So let's go into the code that is actually running this Shiny app. So let's pull that off to the side here and talk about our connected Shiny app part one. So there's some setup that we need to do. I'll stop running that Shiny app now. There's some setup that we need to do. So some functions we need to create that is going to pull for the season we select, what are all the available games? And then once you've selected a game, pulling our metadata for that game, such as scoring and penalties. That's all the information we're pulling from that website directly at that point. So we have our handy dandy functions. We've got tidyverse for our data manipulation needs, Shiny for our Shiny application that we're building, our vest to help us with the web scraping, and then DT to show us our nice tables. We have this function here. Thank you, hockeyreference.com, for hosting the data. I really appreciate how structured their websites are. It makes it really easy to build up these web scrapers if you're new to it. We've got one function, NHL season. All the information it takes is which year. It generates a URL, which let's pretend that this is the, let me pull this over. This is the 2023-2024 NHL schedule and results. So you can see the URL is fairly well structured. And this piece is the only piece that needs to update to change the year that we're pulling information from. And then it's got just one big old table with all this information for us that we're going to be scraping. So we're going to pull the date, the visitor, the number of goals the visitor scores, the home team, the number of scores, the goals the home team made, attendance, duration, and if there's any content here, the any notes that were happening here. And as you can see, these are HTML links as well. So we're also going to be pulling the HTML, the href from this link here as well. So we're pulling that sort of information from that. I didn't want to spend time in the screencast here going through all this web scraping code that's happening here. If you want us to go through and explain how all this code works, leave a comment down below and we can definitely do that. We have a lot of screencasts also explaining how web scraping works, and we've definitely done this with a lot of the sports preference websites, so we didn't want to take the time today to do that. So yeah, we're pulling all that information, putting it all together, and generating a game ID, which is the date versus the visitor and the home team. So that way it's a unique identifier, because I don't think the same team is going to play twice in the same day. So that is a unique way to identify all those. Next, we need to pull the game information. So from that href that we have there, we have the game URL. So we paste that to hockeyreference.com. Again, read that website, pull out the table of scoring, pull the table of penalties out there, and put that into a list. And so that's our NHL game function. So we've got all that web scraping code out of the way, so that now we can just call that inside of our Shiny app. Let's build our actual Shiny application. Patrick, can you kind of take us through that?
Yeah, so let's get us started here. The UI is always where we start with our Shiny app, which is defining what the user sees and what kind of inputs they can have. This is a very simple UI. It has a sidebar panel, as we saw in the intro of today's show. And that sidebar panel allows the user to select any season from 1950 to 2023. Remember that the season that they're selecting is the second half of the season. So it'd be like 2022 to 2023 is the 2023 season. This season would be 2023 to 2024. So you would still have some games that have 2023 in them in the 2024s.
Yeah, I'll just update that now.
Oh yeah, we can update.
Super easy.
And then like the game IDs here are the ID part of that URL that basically allows us to find the game from that large table that had all the information about scoring and attendance that we just looked at. And then the main panel here, which is a little nifty. Oh yeah, choices equals null. So there are no choices yet. We're going to keep that blank. That was what the grayed out word said. We'll show how that works in the server. And then the main panel here is different than the other main panels that we had. Usually when we do a main panel, we kind of define the canvas that we want the user to see. So, hey, we want to output a table here, and we want to output a little plot here, and maybe a little plot over there. And you know, this is the grid that we want it to look like, etc. So here, instead of doing that, we're allowing the UI to be totally flexible. And so the UI in and of itself is something that we're going to need to render in the server. So basically what we're saying is, hey, UI, don't do anything until we say do something. So the UI is going to be totally blank. So it is going to be its own dynamic piece. That's it. That's the server. That's the UI. Yeah. The server is obviously what's going to define some of the nuts and bolts of how the inner workings get the user their information. So we have our function. Again, server is a function. We have an input, we output, and we have a session here because we're going to be doing some observe events where we want to say, hey, within the same user session, when they do something, feed information back to them. Be able to feed back these game IDs once they select a year, right? So this is nice and commented out here. We can see that first step is when a year is selected, we're going to get the games for that year. So all that's happening here is basically instead of containing all of the data in a database, or instead of containing all the data in a CSV file or a JSON file or a text file, what we're saying is, hey, leave the data right there at hockeyreference.com. And whenever the user does something, we'll just go out and get it. And so this first reactive here is all it's doing is it's running that function up above, and it's saying whatever year they said they wanted, just go to Hockey Reference and grab those games. Now, obviously, this will be problematic if Hockey Reference decides to totally change their website. Everything breaks, but they haven't changed since whatever we had 1950. So we're pretty confident that this
Yeah,
is going to stay the
yeah.
same.
And you could also point this to a different location. I mean,
Totally.
hockeyreference.com is awesome for hosting this. Um, Scrape respectfully, but you could also change this to point to some internal reference, some internal database, or some internal sites that you have as well. This doesn't just have to go out to some external site.
Correct, correct. So that one's going to grab us the available games for that season, whatever season's been selected. Then next in line 118, we're going to update the game options to reflect the current games. So right now we have this reactive called available games, and this observe event is saying, hey, if they select a season, okay, if there's some available games, let's go ahead and update the input for the games that they can choose. So go ahead and drop all those into that component of the user interface and update that select input. So we're going to say, hey, within that session, get the input ID of the games. And this is where the little piece of the, this is a little kind of like trick when you're doing select inputs, is if you want nothing to be shown, you use the little, the C there, the concatenate, and you basically create a string. And usually what people will do is the first string that they'll create, the first piece that they'll create is just a blank, just two quotes. So it'll be blank. It'll be select games, and it'll be a blank bar, or a blank, a blank bar. And then once they push the drop down, they'll get the list of games. Here, Ellis said, hey, don't just make it a blank bar. Use this word, choose games. And that's why we saw it grayed out there. And so it kind of just gives a nice little, some of these things are nice kind of little window dressing for the user so that they know that something's going on, and they're not like, what the hell is this weird empty bar? How do I get anything?
Why is
And
this
so,
not doing anything?
yeah,
What do
so
I
it's
have
kind
to
of,
do to get the shiny app to function?
yeah, it's directing them to the information. And so that's kind of a cool little hack. And it's one that I use all the time as well. So I really like that. Then we get down to line 131. So once the selected game, we're going to pull out the game level data. So remember, there's a bunch of data that we're yanking from those two tables on Hockey Reference. We want to grab that data. We want to organize it in a way that it can be usable for the actual main panel of that plot, right? So we grab the game info data. So we got the available games. We're going to filter by whatever the heck that user said, hey, I want this game. I want to check out San Jose versus Vancouver or whatever it was. We're going to grab that. And then in the next piece of information is going to grab the scrape data. So grab the information, the data from that game. So remember, there's a function up above called NHL game, which was reaching out to Hockey Reference and grabbing this information and organizing it for us. So we're just going to run that function and say, hey, now that we know what game they want from which season, grab that game information and just dump it into this list, because it's a whole bunch of lists that hockey reference returns, that table is going to return lists. And if you've seen our previous episodes on web scraping, any of the sports reference pages, we always have to, pluck a list because usually there's multiple tables that are really well organized and super easy for you to, grab data. So again, the folks at sportsreference.com make this highly accessible. These are some of the best websites to get data from. And then the else is null is just to basically say, hey, if there's nothing there, we don't want anything to happen. We want to make sure that it stays clean.
Yeah. It's also to make sure, so if they've selected a game, so this is also for states when we've changed the season, but the input game selection hasn't updated in the background of the Shiny app. So just
Yeah,
because you've changed the available game selections, because you've changed the season, this reactive hasn't updated because you haven't interacted with the select input. And so what this is doing is it's protecting us by saying, hey, if we filter here and this game no longer exists in available games, don't
yeah,
try to scrape that information because obviously this is empty and therefore this is going to return an error. So let's
yeah.
protect ourselves and go, hey, if game info is a game that exists in available games, yeah, scrape the information because we know that exists still that we're interested in. But
Yep.
otherwise, don't worry about it, return null. So that
Yep.
way we have states that we can look at game data to know whether we successfully pulled information or not.
That's right. And so now we're up to generating the table outputs and then rendering that dynamic main panel. So Ellis, why don't you take us home here and finish up the Shiny app?
Sounds good. All right, so now we've got we want to output some information in our main panel here. So let's generate two DT tables from the scoring and penalties data sets that we pull from the website here. So we're pulling out the scoring summary and the penalty summary from the data sets, and we're going to display that in our Shiny app. So we're going to use the render DT function. Inside that, we're going to generate the data table. We're going to pull out from game data the scoring entry in that list, which is just that table, just nicely formatted. We're going to set our options to be list or length change as false, which means the user can't change the length of that table. I think that's acceptable because these tables shouldn't be very large. They shouldn't be spanning more than like 15 entries. So I'm not too worried about not letting them change the length of the table. As well, we're going to set the DOM to T. So DOM stands for document object model. It's an HTML thing. Don't worry about that. But basically, all we're saying is by setting this to T, the only thing we want displayed is the table from our DT. So, normally there's a lot of window dressing around our DT tables. There's the filtering, there's the searching that you can do. There's so much you can do. Again, these tables are going to be very simple. I just like the look of the DT. So by setting it DOM to T, it's only going to show the table, and we're going to do the same sort of idea for penalties. Now we're going to construct that main panel as the rendered UI, because if you remember earlier, this was a UI output, and we set the output ID to be main panel. So we say, all right, the output for main panel is going to be a render UI, so that way they're linked together, right? We're generating a UI. I'm going to have this first piece be an if statement saying, okay, if we have not selected a game, or if game data is null, select or just show to the user select game to display using the P tag. So we're getting into a little bit of HTML at this point, but this is the P tag in HTML stands for paragraph. And all we're showing is this string here to say, hey, select a game to display. I don't have a game yet to show you, so select one from the dropdown. But if they have selected a game and we have game data, let's show them all that information. So that's I like to do this with my UIs. That way it prompts the user to go do a thing easily so that they're not just looking at the Shiny app, as Patrick mentioned earlier, and going, what the heck am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be clicking? Why is it not showing anything? Here it's a very clear, hey, you need to select a game in order for the Shiny app to do anything.
Mhm.
So if they have selected a game, we go into this else statement here. And now we're going to construct a tag list. So a tag list is kind of like Shiny's version of a list. And what it's saying is we have a set of tags that we're going to be showing. You could use a list, but I think a tag list is like the proper way to be doing it. I know that there's opinions on whether you use list or tag list in Shiny. I'm just going with the Shiny version here. Next, we're basically constructing HTML from this using the nice tags that come from HTML tools, in that's included in Shiny. So we're going to construct a header level 2, include that game ID. So that's the date, visitor, and home team. Then we're going to construct that link, which we think is a really cool piece to take us from the Shiny app that we have out to hockeyreference.com. And so the A tag in HTML stands for a hyperreference link. We're going to show, this is the string that we're going to show to the user. So we're going to say hockeyreference.com game site. And now href is the attribute for the A tag that says where it goes to if a person clicks on it. So if you've ever been onto a website and you mouse over something and it says, hey, link out to this website here, this is what you were probably clicking on. And you go to the href. And so we're going to paste together hockeyreference.com and the game URL. And so with those two pieces of information, we have the base website as well as the specific game that we want to go to pasted together. It'll take you out to the hockeyreference.com's game website. We're going to add this horizontal rule, so tags HR, so that it kind of makes a nice visual break between the top piece of information that we're showing and then some more information. We're going to do a header level 3, so this is going to be a little bit smaller than header level 2, and put the word final. And these are the final results. And we're going to put together a bunch of paragraphs, so they're going to be shown on individual lines here. We're pasting together information like the home team, what the home team is, and their goals, visiting team, and the number of goals they had, duration of the game, and attendance. And it should just paste it all together and it'll look really nice in our HTML. Of course, it's not really styled, so I'm sure any web developers are watching this and screaming internally because I don't apply any CSS. I'm sorry, that's just not my skill set.
Not a graphic designer.
Unfortunately, I'm not. Then we're going to add another horizontal rule and do some of those game stats. So that's where we're going to put a header level 4, again, a little bit smaller than header level 3. Put the word scoring there and have our data table output for scoring. Another header level 4 and the DT for penalties, which were created up here. So it's a little funny the order in which we have them, but if you remember Shiny apps, the order in which you have things in the server means nothing. It's helpful to order things in a right way that makes sense to you. But order inside of a Shiny app means nothing. Inside of the reactives and inside of these things, yes, order does matter. This will propagate down linearly, like the way that you expect a script to behave. But we can define these up here, but not define their outputs until down here. That's fine. And so that's the thing to remember about Shiny apps is you don't have to think about them in a linear fashion. And then now that we've built up our server and our UI, we can just click Run App. And we have our beautiful Shiny app. But now we know all the different elements that we're seeing here. So it starts with the 2024 season. Because that starts as a default selected season, it's able to go scrape the available games. But because we have the choose game equals an empty string, it sets this to be a grayed out selection here. And because we haven't selected a game, it goes, hey, you need to select a game before I'm going to show anything over here. Once you select a game, it shows us all that information. We have, I'll drag us over here because I don't think anything appears here. We have the date, visitor, who's at home, takes us over to I pressed Control and then clicked on the link, and that's a way to open up a new tab in Chrome. Takes us to the hockey reference site for that game, so you could see more information that we're not displaying. You can see the scoring and the nice DT here, as well as all the penalties that occurred. You can change the season. Let's go back to 96. I don't know. Let's pick our random year. And you can see everything resets because we're not going to start with a selected game, of course, right? Again, you can choose a game. Let's choose the Red Wings versus the Oilers. And all the same information is shown here in the Shiny app. Of course, apparently they didn't have duration or attendance in the data set that
Hmm.
were being shown here.
Maybe it wasn't collected back then, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But the nice thing about Hockey Reference is their tables are always consistent, so even if it wasn't collected, their tables are going to look similar. And then again, all this information is pulled for us, and you can go to that website and you can kind of interact with all that. And that is how you can build a Shiny app that's doing web scraping and linking back to other sources dynamically.
Ah, that's cool.
So, with that, I think that's episode 162 of TidyX, unless Patrick, you have anything else to add?
No, nothing else to add. I think it's a cool example, and next week we'll extend this to some player examples,
Yep.
which will be fun.
All right. With that, thank you for joining us for 162 episodes of TidyX. As always, my name's Ellis Hughes. You can find me on various social media sites at Ellis_Hughes.
And my name's Patrick Ward. You can find me on X at OSPPatrick, at tidy_explain is where the screencast lives on X. Of course, the easiest way to hit us up and get your questions answered, maybe make one of your questions a future show, is on the YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, drop the comments and questions down below. And as I said at the outset, if you enjoy our work, you feel like it's helped you, you want to support the show, we do have a Patreon page. We're really appreciative of everything that people have donated. And we love doing the show. So we love to hear that other people love it as well.
Yep, exactly. Thank you all so much, and keep on exploring your world.